My name is Kenneth Reisch, Reisch. I live in Worthington, Ohio.
Dr. Reisch, can you talk about your own personal history?
Oh, just a little bit. I grew up with a father who liked gardening, and that's where I became interested. He actually invented a garden hoe called the Handy Hoe, which was on the market for many years. He sold it to garden clubs, and we had a lot of fun with that. I have a few of them at home, or just a couple of them, I guess, is all I have left. But went to the University of Connecticut and studied landscape design. Graduated from there and was making a decision about graduate school, and was actually signed up to go to Cornell. And they had offered me an assistantship, and I was anxious to go. And then I had a phone call from Dr. L.C. Chadwick, whom I've never met. And he said, "I've got a fellowship to offer you." I said, "Gee, that sounds good." And I accepted. And that was the reason I came to Ohio. Probably the best decision I ever made. The interesting thing was that I was on the Ohio Nurserymen's Association Fellowship when I came here. And had a lot of good experiences in those early days. I did my graduate work here, received a master's degree and then a doctorate in 1956. And they kept saying, "Do you want a job?" I said, "Sure." So I had a job. Today you need to go through 16 committees and all kinds of things to get an academic position. But I did have a very good experience because in those days, everything in horticulture, in the Department of Horticulture, was practical. We did a lot of practical research. We taught applied science, so to speak, and it was the way it worked. It has changed today, of course. Things are much more basic as far as research is concerned. But in those days, we were doing things to help the industry, plant propagation and developing new varieties of flowers and ornamental plants. And I became an assistant professor, an instructor first, then an assistant professor. And I taught with Dr. Chadwick and D.C. Kiplinger for many years, and in the landscape horticulture area, which was called ornamental horticulture at that time. And taught plant materials, identification, nursery management, arboriculture, used to climb trees, and we had students climbing trees and only had one fall out, interestingly. And fortunately, no one was injured. Today, I don't think the students leave the ground, but we did have a lot of fun in those days. And I guess hopefully help some students to learn something and to make their way in life. Many of the students in those early days were sons and daughters of industry people, nurserymen and florists. And today that's changed a lot, I know, but it was a good time to become acquainted with the nursery industry and to become acquainted with those young people. I was on the faculty, and in those days, the faculty were very heavily involved with industry. Dr. Chadwick was involved with the Plant Propagators Society, the National Shade Tree Conference, which is now the International Society of Arboriculture, and Dr. Kiplinger was in charge was involved with the Ohio Florist Association. And for some reason, I guess I got involved also, and I became involved with the Ohio Nurserymen's Association, which was founded in 1908 over in Dayton, Ohio. And in those days, the ONA was a small organization. I think Frank Turner from Berry Hill Nursery was the secretary at that time, and then George Gins, another nurseryman, became the secretary, and they asked me to serve as a secretary. But prior to that time, they asked me to edit the Buckeye Nurseryman, which was a forerunner to the very sophisticated and excellent publication that you know about today. And Dr. Chadwick, when he came here in 1929, he came to Ohio State, he began a publication called Ohio Nursery Notes, which was an extension publication that went out to the industry. And I became involved in that when I joined the faculty. And then this evolved into what we called the Buckeye Nurseryman at that time in 1957. And I did that for a few years, and then they asked me if I would serve as part-time secretary of the association. And in 1961, I became the secretary of the Ohio Nurserymen's Association, and then at some point in time, I think they made it the executive director or something like that. But we had a very good experience there, working with the industry very closely. And today this is somewhat frowned upon at universities to get that intimately involved. But in those days, it was the way to get information out. We related to people. We did extension work as we worked with them. And so it wasn't strictly an administrative position. It was an administration position that was involved intimately with the industry and the people in the industry. I served in that position until 1973, left the Department of Horticulture at that time, went to the dean's office as associate dean, and then I retired in '89. So that's kind of my history up to date. But with the Ohio Nurserymen's Association, we have, of course, the annual Ohio Short Course. I was involved in that. And in the 1950s, Dr. Chadwick and I were in charge of that short course, and we met at the Neal House in downtown Columbus, and we had 12 to 15 exhibitors in the Neal House up on the mezzanine. And it was kind of interesting because I remember I used to worry about getting card tables and chairs for them to work with, and today, of course, the exhibits are very sophisticated. But let's see, we moved from the Neal House to the Sheraton Hotel in 1963 or 4. I can't remember the exact date, but 3 or 4. And when we left, I think our exhibitors had grown to about 44. When we went to the Sheraton, I think they went up to 55. And then in 1972, I think there were 105 exhibitors or something like that when I left the organization. And today there are many hundreds of exhibitors, and of course many thousand attend the short course. I do recall that in 1972, 1,500 attended the short course. And today it's about 15,000, I think, something in that realm. So it's quite a change over those years. We had about 200 to 270 members of the association in those years during the 70s or 60s and 70s. And today, I don't know the exact number, but I'm sure it's many, many times that. The budget, by the way, be interesting. The budget that we worked with in those years was $10,000 a year. That was the, I think, the highest budget I ever had to work with. And today, I don't know what it is, but it's significant. So that was a very good experience working with the Nurserymen's Association. I also worked with the Plant Propagators Society too, and Dr. Chadwick got me involved in so many things. I didn't have time to do much else, but I had a lot of fun and a lot of interesting experiences. But the Plant Propagators Society was in its infancy in those days, back in the 50s. And I can't give you the date when it was founded either. I'm sorry, I don't have that in my mind. But I served as the executive secretary of that group for about 3 or 4 years. And Dr. Chadwick got me involved in that, of course, as I mentioned. But that was a good experience because the Plant Propagators Society was a new innovation in a sense that much of the information on plant propagation was a big secret. Everybody wanted to keep their own little secrets in their own little greenhouses, and they wouldn't tell anybody else how it was done. And the Plant Propagators Society was the first step in expanding the knowledge base of that particular field because people shared ideas, they got together and speakers would tell about what they were doing, and it became a wide open field after that. And of course that has grown out to the International Plant Propagators Society and with many thousands of members all over the world. Again, that was a good experience. I had fun doing that. And I worked with Dr. Chadwick on the National Shade Tree Conference. In the meantime, I did some teaching, and I did some research, and I did some extension work, and it was a good time for me. I really I've enjoyed my stay in Ohio. I'm a native of Connecticut, and I was the only Easterner in the group at the dean's office. They all came from the West or Ohio, and we had fun with that too. But it was a good experience that I had as an academician here in Ohio.
Conference. Were they initiated here in Ohio? Or?
The Plant Propagators Society was, yeah. Shade Tree Conference, I don't know. Chad had a lot to do with the initiation of that. I'm not sure if it was begun here or not.
Okay, could you then formally speak
yeah.
that these things were kind of started here in Ohio?
Yeah, the Plant Propagators Society actually, well, I'm not sure if it was started in Ohio, but the first meeting was at the Wade Park Manor in Cleveland, Wade Park Manor Hotel. And Dr. Chadwick was involved in that. He became president, I think, in 1953. I think he was president of the Propagator Society. It started about 51 or 52. I do recall that now. And many of the members, some of the leaders, Jim Wells from New Jersey, and some of the leaders came from the East Coast, where a lot of plant propagation was done commercially. And so it did start. The first meeting, at least, was in Cleveland, Ohio. The Shade Tree Conference, I don't recall. I know that Dr. Chadwick was heavily involved at the outset. He was the executive director of that group for many years, and it, of course, was very prominent in my life as well as the universities because Chad was so heavily involved in it. And that is basically all I know about those two organizations. When I came to Ohio State to do graduate work, I came in 1952, and Professor Alex Laurie was retiring. I went to his retirement dinner, and he was, of course, a great leader in horticulture and in the floriculture area, and it really established the pattern in the department and in the landscape floriculture area at Ohio State. And D.C. Kiplinger was one of his students, as was L.C. Chad. Well, Chad shouldn't have said that. Chadwick was not. D.C. Kiplinger was one of his students. And then Kip took over when Alex Laurie retired. And of course, Chad came to Ohio State in '29 from Cornell. And so the team was a nice team. And Laurie and Kip and Chad espoused close working relationships with industry because in those days, basic research was being conducted in the basic sciences, but not in horticulture, because horticulture was badly in need of information. And so the whole philosophy was to provide information for the growers, for the users of the products, and to educate the public as to what was good about flowers and shrubs and trees and all those things. And so it was a very practical program that we had. They used to call it spray and pray, that kind of research, because a lot of it was simply trying chemicals, and we worked with the chemical companies and with a lot of the commercial companies trying out new equipment and so forth to see if it worked. And so we were basically telling the industry, well, this is a good thing to try because we've tried it and it works this way. And we would go out into nurseries and florists around the state and try new products and new materials, new equipment, and then relate that through extension publications and other means to the industry. And the short course was another, both the florist and the nursery short course were ways of transmitting much of this information to the industry people, as well as the organizations, the Propagators Society and the Shade Tree Conference. These were all designed to share information and to spread knowledge. In 1969, the Horticulture Department moved from the main campus to Howlett Hall on the West Campus. And we basically abandoned the horticulture gardens on the main campus. And so we needed a facility for teaching on the agriculture campus. And land was made available to us north of the Agricultural Administration Building, about 4 acres. And we established the horticulture gardens there along Lane Avenue. And it was an interesting experience because we didn't have a lot of money to work with, nor did we have a lot of plants to work with. So we went to the Nurserymen's Association. We said, we need help. And they said, fine. We'll provide the plants if you can get this place in shape for planting. Well, the university provided some dollars. And we were able to establish there at Lane Avenue very beautiful and practical gardens that were used for teaching. And the main part of that was most valuable to us was that we were working with industry and the university to create this. And it since has become a rather prominent feature on the campus because that evolved into the Chadwick Arboretum, which is named after L.C. Chadwick. And today that's a very outstanding facility as well as a collection for teaching as well as for the general public. And the Chadwick Arboretum has evolved from a very small beginning and to a rather extensive area now north of Lane Avenue on the campus and around the Howlett Hall building on the Ag campus. So that was a lot of fun, and I worked with that very closely at its outset and was involved in that up until recent years very closely. I spent a year working with the Arboretum as a counselor after I retired. And I've been very proud of that. I think it's something that we can take pride in. We hope that it'll become even more affluent and more prominent because of its potential and its location on the campus. We don't have enough dollars, obviously, for the Arboretum. It's something that's always, and Janet, Janet Oberleson was our director for many years, and she knows what it means not to have much money to work with. And so fundraising is important, and that the Arboretum will grow and it will become a significant fixture on the campus. I still think it's a secret that is not too well known on the main campus. Let's see, what else you want to talk about?
Would you talk a bit about what your favorite plant?
Oh, I don't have a favorite plant. I love the flowering dogwood, but I really haven't had much success growing that here. Our soils are much too alkaline and too heavy clay. I do like that plant very much, but I like many plants. I've enjoyed them, and I don't have enough time to, with all my busy schedule, to work with them as I'd like, but I do enjoy many plants.